Good afternoon. I call to order the Lynchburg Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, January 9th, 2019. Hope everyone had a good holiday. Thank you all for coming out today. We have no minutes to approve, and I'm actually going to move the election of the new officers to the end because I don't feel comfortable dumping the new chair on a person with no chance to prep. So we're going to jump right into our public hearing items. The first public hearing item is the petition of Victoria's Inventory LLC to rezone 301 Rivermont Avenue from B1 Limited Business District to B4 Urban Commercial District to allow an existing building to be converted into a 30-unit apartment building.
So, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, this area, as the majority of Rivermont Avenue is recommended for traditional neighborhood uses on the city's future land use map in the comprehensive plan. These are the city's older neighborhoods, primarily constructed prior to World War II. Currently, the building has 22 non-conforming apartment units. They're considered non-conforming because the property is zoned B1, and in a B1 district, a conditional use permit is required in order to do multifamily. The reason for the rezoning petition today is to essentially eliminate some of the requirements that would facilitate higher density. They're requesting up to 30 units. In a B1 district, the minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet, and then you need 1,000 square feet per unit. So by ordinance with the B1 district, there would only be 14 units that could be permitted by right. Right now they have 22 that are non-conforming. Even if they came in to get the CUP, could only have 14 units. Our primary concern with this is addressing the impacts of parking. Originally, we had, it was indicated that there were going to be agreements for off-street parking. Those were not presented to us at the time that we wrote the report. Planning staff is definitely in support of revitalizing and renovating these older buildings. However, we do need to make sure that impacts are addressed. My understanding is that the petitioner has gone back to the drawing board a little bit and is prepared to present some parking options to the commission. And if that is in fact the case, we may be led to change to a more favorable recommendation for the rezone.
Okay, thank you. Well, who is here to speak on behalf of this petition?
Tony West, Victoria's Inventory.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Thank you, Nancy. If you could also sign in, please.
Gotcha.
And,
Yes, ma'am, Robin.
and can you repeat your name, please?
Tony West.
Tony West.
Thank you, Robin. You good? Appreciate it. All right. What we did at first, we're in the process of vacating Bridge Street. My attorney is finishing up the paperwork on that, and that's why the first time we didn't come through with a plan, because we haven't vacated Bridge Street yet. But I own 303, and on 303 we can put up to 34 units on part of the parking between that and 301. We're going to use the garage, the existing garage, to put 6 garage spaces there, and we'll put 34 parking spaces on the property. Nancy Marion is leasing me 12 spaces, and I brought, in the process of purchasing the garage, what is the address on that? 401 Rivermont Avenue, which would give me another 12 to 15 spaces. So I have the signed contract here to purchase that. I have a set of plans and lease from Nancy.
Okay.
Which would give me about 50 spaces.
50 total?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or up to 62, actually. 60.
All right. Well, we will revisit the parking
Okay.
and probably in a few minutes. We'll
All right.
continue with the public hearing session first.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone opposed? All right, at this point, the public hearing is closed. We can revisit with you, Tom, and discuss this parking in more detail.
I think that would be fine. What the commission may speak with the petitioner about is considering proffering that at least a minimum of 30 off-street parking spaces will be provided prior to occupancy of the building, and I think that would satisfy staff's concerns with parking. Because obviously we haven't been able to look at where all these are and what needs to be done. But in terms of getting Mr. West moving forward, being able to get his building permits to renovate the building, I think that would be sufficient.
All right. So the alternative would be to provide a detailed parking plan and
Yes.
revisiting this at our next meeting, presumably. What is being suggested is a general proffer where you are going to provide 30 off-street parking spots, and then the details can be worked out as the plan is developed.
Sounds like a winner to me.
Well, my concern would be, you said, Mr. West, that you have a lease with Ms. Marion for 12 spots, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what is the terms of the lease? How long is that gonna last?
We didn't put a time frame on that, but in truth, sir, I wouldn't need them because on my site, I can easily support 32 spaces is what we have drawn up here. And I also bought that garage that's
Okay.
right at 401, which is a minimum of at least 15 parking spaces. And then the rest of Blackford Street, back behind all those apartments, if you look at the map across the bridge, I own that LLC, and I pretty much bought everything up Rivermont Avenue. So we'll be building parking spaces in the back of all those units anyway.
Okay, so even if for whatever reason, at the end of the, say, a year, if you and Ms. Marion didn't continue the lease of those 12, we're still within the parking that we need to have, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Even before we'd open the building, because we're gonna be under construction for probably about a year. And by the end of the year, I have all the parking addressed and everything built out before we'd even get a CO for the building.
Okay, and I'm sorry, when you said you had a sales contract for that additional lot, how many parking spots were gonna be in there?
Approximately 15.
15? Okay, well, most of the time contracts come through, but obviously we want to make certain that the title eventually passes to make certain we have those 15.
Yes, sir. Gotcha.
And Tom, the increase from, to allow the 22 existing units, that really is tied into the parking needs, not the size of the building or the lot size.
Correct.
So
We're
that-
primarily concerned with the amount of.
The fact that
parking.
we're still going to be above the allowable number, because if it's being addressed by the parking, then the concerns are all addressed.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions or thoughts? We don't request proffers. We're not allowed to, but it's something that if the petitioner would like to offer one, those are things that we take into account when we make our decision. So if you are interested in offering the proffer as discussed with at least 30 off-street parking sites, that can be worked into the petition, and we can vote on it as amended if that's something you wanted to do.
Okay, or can we vote on it now? Because I guess I feel as though of course I'm gonna put parking.
Yeah,
This
so
is
all-
business. you
All we
know,
need to
you
do is get
always-
that in as a written proffer, and,
Yeah, you can write that out now.
yeah.
That's what I brought you the paper for, in
Okay.
case you decide that that's. what
And
you
that
want.
would be the official okay. That's recommended
Okay.
for approval. So if you want to take a minute and write something and then let the planning staff glance at it,
All right,
and-
well, you just want me to state that I agree to have 30 on-street parking?
off-street
parking.
off-street parking.
Okay, that seems simple enough.
And then when
Hey,
that
Rob,
goes
you
to
got
city,
one? Thanks.
when that goes to city council, that would be listed as one of the proffers.
Gotcha.
Try to-
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. All right, Robin.
Not any
mean,
better? Oh, my goodness. I'm sorry. Let's see.
It's coming together, it's coming like,
At least she's lending you one. She won't give me one at all.
thanks, Ron.
Let's try one, let's try that one. 'Cause that one will probably write really well, Tony. You wanna try that?
All right, appreciate that.
Sorry, I should have tested them out first.
Yeah, you all right, Ron? All right.
And just, you can show that to Mr. Martin.
All
All
right.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you guys are happy, I'm happy. Anytime we can revitalize a building and come out with more parking, that's a win-win. So do we have, a motion? Motion on the, so I was trying to think of how to word it. A motion on the petition as amended?
Yeah, with the profits of the 30 off-street parking
Yeah.
profit to it. I mean, I'd so move.
All right, so a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are recommending approval. So that will be adjusted as it goes to city council.
Gotcha.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good. Thank you.
Thank you for working with us.
All right. Thank you. What you got?
Yeah, email that to me.
As we move forward through our agenda, just a note that we did get a new one printed out, and there was an item left off. We will be discussing the Community Resilience Coalition at the end, and that is part of the official agenda. It just got knocked off when there were some adjustments made. So our second public hearing item is the petition of Fieldstone Manor LLC for a conditional use permit at 110 Aaron Place to allow fill in the floodplain to facilitate the construction of a new entrance to the previously approved townhouse development. The property is zoned R3 medium-density residential. Rachel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of Planning Commission. The subject property is roughly 12.5 acres located at 110 Aaron Place, and as you said, is zoned R3 medium-density residential. The area proposed for fill within the floodplain is located along a Burton Creek tributary on the property. All requests to fill in the floodplain require conditional use permits from City Council. The purpose of today's meeting is to discuss the proposed fill. The number of units in the development has already been approved by council through the 2 existing CUPs on the property. The original CUP in 1989 was for the initial development of 108 townhomes, with an amendment to the CUP in 2006 for an additional 16 units for a total of 124 townhomes. 58 units have been constructed, leaving 66 townhomes buildable by right. When the previous CUPs were granted, this project did not require fill in the floodplain. As shown on the 1989 plan and 2006 plan, the floodplain limits were not affected. This is the 89 plan here, and here's the access road. And the 2006 plan here, again, the floodplain unaffected. And FEMA updated the mapping in 2008, which extended the floodplain into this development, which necessitates the need for the CUP before you today. While the comprehensive plan states that the city should limit development within the 100-year floodplain, the proposed fill would facilitate development that could not otherwise occur. This development in particular received approval for the townhouses prior to the FEMA update. Council has approved that development and the number of units. The petitioner is vested in this property and has been working towards completing the project as approved by council. The Technical Review Committee reviewed this item on March 6, 2018. Any comments are going to be addressed at the final site plan stage. The Planning Division does recommend approval of the CUP for fill in the floodplain.
Great,
I'm going to have to recuse myself, Mr. Chairman, because of personal relationships with some of the property owners.
great, thanks. We'll track you down after. Who is here to speak on behalf of this petition?
Good afternoon. My name is Jamie White with White Engineering and Design. I am the engineer representative for Fieldstone Manor LLC with this project. As staff has explained the situation that we have currently found ourselves in. We had an original master plan that was approved. It was done by Hurt and Profit back in 1989. I worked with a company that revised this with Guffey Warner years after that in 2006 with the intent of increasing that 16 additional units when they acquire some additional property. Through all of these stages, it was always the intent and purpose to access Phase 3 in the route that was shown on the original Hurt and Profit plan. We have not changed that. Construction happened after the 2006 plan was approved, and the stub street was already constructed in the location that is shown on the screen there. So we already have that stub road already built, ready to extend into the next side of this development on the other side of the creek. We have done the analysis on the floodplain, and we are proposing to provide the culverts required. It would be 3 culverts that we're going to put in there to transfer the water through here. And the culverts will handle the water more efficiently than the zigzagging creek. And the amount of actual fill material that is actually inside the floodplain is fairly minor because most of it is filled up with a void of pipe. So it's almost negligible, the amount of fill material that's going in. The Burton Creek floodplain, I think, was when they'd done the analysis to see how the effects of Burton Creek happened in 2008 by FEMA. We are above any effects from Burton Creek, so it's not something that Burton Creek's contributing to that's filling back up in this area. It's just a contributing drainage area that's up above us that has changed over the years. And when FEMA redid the mapping in 2008, they identified additional area that would be within that 100-year flood zone. And I think what we're doing here is based off the original master plan that was approved. This is the only route we have to get to it, and that route is already stubbed for us to continue on with the next part of the development. Yep.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
May I have questions for you?
Sure.
A little bit. As we start the public hearing side of this, I do want to point out we received many letters from the public, and we appreciate those. They are all part of the public record. If you sent a letter in to Robin, we all got a copy of it. And just to reiterate what staff said, we are here to consider the filling in of the floodplain. Concerns about the development itself and impacts on traffic are really already been voted on and considered when this original petition was approved several years ago. So you are welcome to share those concerns, but as a planning commission, we are going to be focusing on the floodplain itself. So is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this petition?
Good afternoon. My name is Dan O'Neill, and I'm the owner of the property and the developer, Fieldstone Manor LLC. I acquired the land in 2006. I've been involved in the construction of 49 of the townhomes in I guess you call Phase 2. And, we began construction in 2006, and in September of 2008, the housing economy began one of the worst cycles that this country's ever gone through. And I'm just very excited to have an opportunity now to have a totally different economy 10 years later and have an opportunity and feel the excitement to be able to continue across the creek. And as Jamie has said, the elevation of the floodplain has changed since we've acquired the property. And anything that we've built is obviously out of the floodplain, and we continue to be out of it. So I appreciate the Planning Commission's recommendation, the Planning Department, and I'm very excited to be able to begin construction on the last phase of Fieldstone Manor.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And a reminder, we do have time limits that are explained in the agenda. Anyone here else to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone who would like to speak against it?
Pen's giving up.
I just keep getting out different ones and then I'm sorry.
Do you have a crayon, Robin?
Yeah.
You just start using crayons.
I'll wait, and if it's no good, I'll go find a brand new one. There, that's better.
Okay. My name's Larry Simons. I'm one of the owners of 100 Aaron Place, Aaron Commons. There's 9 of our units. These were the initial units built by Frank Guff. And quite frankly, when we bought in, now 20 years ago, we were not aware of the potential building. We were surrounded by trees, and now it's quite different. And I guess I'm concerned that as properties have been sold, there's been no disclosure of the potential for this building and the access to what was originally our entrance, and now it's the entrance to both the ones that have already been built, section 1, 2, phase 1, 2, whatever, and now proposed for the one across the creek. Obviously, you're not here to talk about that, but just to express a concern. The amount of traffic is about as much as the road will handle now. If you put another 69 units across the creek, that's going to be significant amount of traffic coming down our little road. And also the construction traffic will be pretty horrendous until it's built. As far as the floodplain goes, I think we've all seen enough instances where 100-year floods have now become 10-year floods and so on and so forth. And I know the floodplain showing there wasn't there a recent one after that shows part of the buildings? Yeah, that one, 08, shows part of the buildings actually on or pretty close to the existing floodplain. If anyone went out there during the last rains we had last month, they would have seen that little creek full to the top. So there's an awful lot of extreme drainage down that pike, and our concern is with the new building development, that's just going to add to it. So I don't know if an environmental study has been done to support the filling in of that plain, even with the culverts, as refuse, trash, trees, and some get drawn into some of these rushing waters. It can be a problem. So I guess that's the only concern that you're interested in here today is addressing that. I would hope that the planners and the city council will begin to look more carefully at environmental impact, trying to build sustainably and to make sure that any future plans are taken into account. This was done 30 years ago when the original plan was established, and there's been a lot of factors since then. The school doing its construction and what's happened with the building around, and the university expanding probably half at least of the residents in the units that Dan built across from us are Liberty students, many of them more than a few students living in one unit, and lots of cars. So there's going to be a lot of issues with cars and parking and so on. So I just hope that's all taken into consideration as this is looked at. I don't have any problem with building there, but we would hope that there could be a different entrance. We had some discussion some time ago about cutting across and accessing Ward's Ferry Road directly. And I don't know if, again, the city planners have looked at that as a possibility, but it just seems a shame to have all that traffic coming in and out that one bottleneck.
Great, thank you.
Okay?
Others who oppose, who wish to speak? And just a reminder about the time limits. Robin has a clock going up there. Put my eyes on here.
I'm Ted Bell, property owner in Aaron Place in there. Just concerned, I think my comments will probably echo the previous speaker, but the access road that goes down in there is scarcely adequate for the traffic that's there now, and barely adequate for a couple of small cars to meet. And pretty concerned about some heavy construction traffic on there. A lot of small children around, and we're concerned with the floodplain. I don't know what it would look like to build a bridge across there. I'm certainly not opposed to construction, but I'm hoping that we could take a look at maybe finding a different way in there somehow, access it other than that little road, because that road is, as I say, barely adequate now, and adding 69 units may add 200 cars. I don't know, but hopefully you guys will take that into consideration.
Great, thank you. Others opposed? Yes, ma'am, come on up.
My name is Claudia White, and I am living at 100 Aaron Place. And the main reason I am here is because I want to describe, my husband and I, we just bought this property recently, but I want to describe something that I just saw during the raining when we were trying to buy the property. That was the time when it was raining poor many days, and we tried to stop by, but to see if there was some kind of holding water in the area. At that time, we didn't see anything, but a few weeks ago, when we had various days of raining, then I was on the second level, and there is a pipe crossing the road on the floodplain. And the pipe is this big. I cannot say American standard, like it's a huge pipe. And we have two streams of water in both directions coming into that pipe. And at some point, the pipe was kind of clogged. And I was afraid that such a big pipe was clogged. So I'm asking myself, we already have known about this, and we are asking ourselves, if the way it's even currently right now, it is working properly, and the risk of all our houses getting flooded. So that's why I'm here. I took pictures, and I did a a video of the situation. If you would want to have that, I'll be happy to provide that to you. But I feel that if something is developed there, it will require a new study and a new reconsidering how this plan is going to be built, because the conditions, the current conditions, I imagine, and we can see here, are completely different from they were a long time ago. And the problem that we are having now is that we are really having more rain. In fact, we also search on how, if we really needed flood insurance or not, and it still is considered that we don't need insurance. But honestly, as soon as I saw that going on, right for me feet from my house, I think we definitely need to buy an insurance, a flood insurance. So the situation as rain comes in, I think is complicated, and is getting complicated, and I imagine it will be more complicated as new construction will be done in the same area.
Great. All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who's opposed who would like to speak? Mr. White, as petitioner, you are welcome to offer a response to these concerns at this time.
Again, I just want to reiterate what our request is here. Obviously, this has come before with the amount of units, the road location, and it has already been approved in the past. We have submitted the FEMA required no flood certification and supporting documentation that we were going to not cause a rise in the 100-year flood zone. And that's our goal, is to not impact it in a negative way, and that's what we'll do. Obviously, this is a jurisdictional stream. We have had stream and wetland delineation already performed along the creek in the surrounding area around it. There is a couple of small pockets of wetlands that were certified by the Corps of Engineers out there, and we will have to go through the joint permit application as required by the Army Corps of Engineers and DEQ. That is during the site plan process, once we get to that point, through the submittal process. But what we're doing there is not impacting the stream. We're not going to make it any worse than the conditions that are already existing out there. And we're looking just to continue on the development as it was originally intended.
Great, thank you. You could probably just stay there. We'll have questions. All right, at this point, the public hearing is closed. We have open it up for questions and discussion. Commissioners.
Could you explain for me, you described the culverts, and you described very minimal fill. Looking at that creek, what are we talking about length of culvert? I mean, I'm not asking you to...
What we're looking at as far as length of the culverts would probably be between 75 and 100 feet long.
So you're talking about something that's going to run pretty much across that whole expanse.
Right. Now, what we're doing is three culverts wide, about 7,500 feet long each. So in essence, what we're creating is pretty much just an efficient channel for it to continue through, instead of the switchbacking of creeks and shrubs. And
that'll always be the easiest way to channel that water through there. So we're going to move water probably pretty effectively.
It is very
more effectively,
much more efficient
right.
than the existing channel, for sure. So you always have a more of an issue when you have backwater conditions that are coming from floods, and we are above the backwater conditions of Burton Creek. Obviously, in situations like that, then you have to, if you're going to fill in an area, you need to excavate out an equivalent amount of volume, so you're swapping fill in different locations so that it doesn't change the
For your
fill.
diagram.
Right.
Yeah, that you had for that. The other question I had then was, you know, given the grade back there, you know, given what you've got described in that diagram, I think you have a 10% run coming down.
Sure.
As well as what you have naturally.
Sure.
Be a lot of runoff and a lot of stuff coming through there. I don't know how to ask the question other than to say, is there a maintenance plan for those culverts? I mean, all kinds of stuff gets washed down.
Well, the owner is the owner. It'd be no different if somebody puts a driveway in their property.
Sure.
They need to make sure that those are maintained and are not clogged. So obviously, the ownership of the property would need to establish some level of control over making sure that there's, you know, no sticks and logs or whatever that are clogging or crossing across there.
I mean, these are huge culverts, so I mean, it's not.
Yeah,
like,
these
you know,
these are 48 inch.
Yeah.
They're not, you know,
Right,
12
right.
inch pipes.
Right.
But obviously, it's, you know, large sticks can get washed down. It's a good sized gully that comes through there. So you obviously can have some washing. And we could definitely add to the stormwater maintenance agreement. It's a part of, normally you need to make sure that all of these things are maintained and that they're checked periodically. That'll be a part of the stormwater maintenance agreement that would happen for the property regardless, if we're in the flood zone or not. So,
I just wasn't aware of that. I'm sure there was something, I just didn't want to be sure what the something was.
sure, yeah.
I have, well, I don't know if my question is for you or Ms. White, but she mentioned a pipe being clogged. Do you know what she was talking about?
If there's something on the existing property, I'm not positive on that. The property owner, I mean, developer, he may know, has some stuff that he may know that maybe was worked on. I know there were some things that we were, that the owner has worked to resolve some issues that were on the site originally, and maybe that's some of the stuff that was taken care of. I'm not sure of anything on the site now. In the area that we're talking about, across the creek, there's nothing there now. It's just the existing creek, so.
I will just comment that this was very hard to figure out what was supposed to be going on, because this was about the only image we got of the stub and the floodplain, and until, I think, yesterday or today, when you sent out some additional, well, when you sent out the letters from people, somebody sent the plans of both phases, and whatever I got did not have both phases in there with the road in between, so I was just kind of trying to figure out what was going on.
At the time of the original submittal, we had not finalized the next phase of the plan work, so we didn't show the grading and stuff that was on the uphill side for the new 66 units. We weren't at a stage when we were at that point. Obviously, we know what the road's going to look like tying in across to that, but we had not designed the road section for phase 3 at that point in time.
But you're right, Nancy. I walked the site today and I had no idea where this was being proposed. And there is a road crossing the creek right now.
Yes.
So what's that?
Yeah, that's on school property. I think that's part of the public school property that's just above.
It's a grassed over old road that, yeah, it's over by beyond Aaron Place upstream.
Okay, that's
of all
that's
this.
part of the Heritage High School property crossing.
Councilman Dobbins was using to fill on the site, which was, I'm assuming that grass road was probably
In
existing.
2016, when construction was going on, the owner worked with Councilman Dobbins. They needed to move excess material off of Heritage, and they needed somewhere for that dirt.
No, other way around.
Other way around.
May I speak or not?
Yeah, go ahead.
May I speak?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
thank
okay.
you.
In 2016, when Heritage High School was being constructed, the site contract was awarded to Councilman Dobbins. Councilman Dobbins needed to find close to 100,000 cubic yards of fill material to complete the work at Heritage High School. In cooperation with the city, I provided the material off phase 3 of my property. A haul road was constructed to the left of the pink area, which allowed the 100,000 cubic yards to be moved from the site onto the Heritage High School property. So any grass road that you might have seen, one, is not on my property, and two, is a leftover of the construction of Heritage High School. My piece of property is a landlocked piece of property. It has actually no road frontage on Ward's Ferry Road.
Well, that was another question was alternative accesses, but sticking with the culverts though, comparing this to a bridge, what would be how much more open space would you gain with a bridge versus the 3 culverts?
Considering that the depth of the 100-year flood zone in that area isn't very high, in essence, it's not going to make that much of a difference as far as void space. If we have to start building abutment walls and things of that nature, that's going to change the entire shape in the whole area. We start doing that, then we're looking at additional impacts to wetlands and things of that nature that we may not would have an impact to if we just are installing piping. The flood zone, since we're doing large culverts, it's a large void there that we're doing, and the water's not that deep, so it's as far as
With respect to the culvert question, I might add that 200 feet downstream, when this creek goes under Ward's Ferry Road, it passes under Ward's Ferry Road through concrete culverts. Not unlike the concrete culverts that I believe we're proposing 200 feet
which is
upstream of the Ward's Ferry crossing.
No, those are the culverts that were put in a few years ago?
Yes, they were done probably within the last 8 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So Rachel, if this road had been built in originally, and then FEMA updates the floodplains, it's there.
It's just there. They wouldn't be coming to us for any sort of approval at that point.
Wait, say that again?
If they had built the road before FEMA upgraded the flood map, we would not be discussing this right now.
Originally, this was not within the floodplain, within the 100-year floodplain.
But just to be clear, when this was originally passed and the Phase 2 was part of the original package, it was already discussed, the road coming where it would, there was already discussions of where the road was going to go and how it was going to cross the creek.
The road location was the same as it is now in 2006, but FEMA has updated and expanded the floodplain
Right.
since then.
Right, but the road location has not changed since the last time?
Correct.
Okay.
I don't know if you can go back to the map that was a Hurt and Profit map from '89, which was the original master plan. I don't know if you've got that easy to pull up. The road was intentionally placed where it was to avoid the existing flood zone when it was originally there. Sorry, Mr. Warden.
Yeah, likewise would have gone straight through.
Right,
There
yeah,
was
it
no
would have been,
floodplain there.
it would have
That's
been
why it
easier to
had
come
that funny
straight
curve.
down through there and make that change. So that was a 1989 plan that was done by Hurt and Profit. It was intentionally swerved in that direction to miss the floodplain.
Uh-huh.
And then after 2006, when the next phase was the CUP was modified, 2 years later, they came back and did, I don't know why the analysis happened at that time in this section, but the mapping here was changed. And now it extends much further upstream. I think that's just where, in essence, they did an analysis, and they do a more detailed analysis nowadays than they probably did back in the 60s, when some of those maps may have been originally constructed, so.
Well, all the floodplains are going up in size regardless because of the floodplains are always increasing because of development
Right.
and increased runoff.
Tom, a couple of people have voiced concerns or asked if there has been any environmental studies. Is it a requirement to have an environmental study if you're going to be adding fill into a floodplain?
Yes, what they have done and what they are required to do is show that there will be no net rise in the level of the 100-year flood elevation. I believe that work has already been done.
Sure.
So, regardless of whether they put a bridge in or if they put a culvert in, they cannot raise elevation of the floodplain, and that work has been done.
Okay.
And then any other environmental impacts as far as stream, because we'll end up taking out 100 feet of stream and it's going to become culvert. And then if there's any wetlands, then all that gets permitted through the Army Corps of Engineers and DEQ. So we have to go through that process. Now, we've already done the confirmation, and DEQ and the Corps has been to the site to analyze what has been identified by our environmental engineer. But we just have to permit. We're going to have very minor impacts. We're allowed to disturb up to about 300 feet of stream and 1/10 of an acre of wetlands without doing any mitigation practices at all. We're probably going to disturb 100 feet of stream and, maybe 100 square feet of wetlands potentially. So it's going to be very minor impact environmentally in that aspect. And then we have to provide a no-rise certification, which has been done to the flood zone.
Rachel, can you pull up the engineering drawings on this packet here? And so I'm very visually oriented, trying to figure out this 100 feet of culvert you're gonna put in.
This?
That's close enough. Could you go up there and show me about where that 100 feet looks, where that will run, so I can really wrap my brain around it, so I can see where it is,
Pointer.
where we pointed or whatever?
100 feet wide.
Yes, where he's planning on putting the culverts there.
You need me to zoom in, Jamie? It's the green button.
Is it working?
Turn it on the back side, the green
I
button.
Just tested it, the green button. Are you
Under your,
pressing?
turn it around, the back side, push the green button,
No,
right there.
no, not that green button, the green button on the top. It's the little green line.
Oh, there we go. All right, there we go. It was hiding from me. I am licensed by the state, so. Our road is extending here. What we are looking to do is, we'll be putting 3 culverts that are stretched in this area, right through here.
So it's gonna be directly where that stub road is, it won't.
Right, yeah,
The
exactly.
culverts will not extend up or down any
No,
further.
we're not, obviously, we're not gonna be, going anywhere further down here. What we're gonna do is, we'll put in culverts that allow for the length of the access road to go in, shoulders of the road, slope down at 3-to-1 slopes. That'll be the limits of what we're gonna have put in there.
And that will address the erosion water runoff that's coming down right now.
Yeah, they're existing right now. There's erosion that's happening at
Yes.
the end of that right there. That will be resolved when the rest of the road is completed.
Okay.
Because there's already a little jog in the creek right there, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Either close on there or just before that, so you'll straighten a lot of that.
It's right.
Thank you.
And I know this doesn't have anything to do necessarily with what we're voting on, but some of the concerns with the neighbors have been to the existing road. And from what we read today in some of the letters was the heavy construction that was going on with Heritage and stuff, that it had damaged the road somewhat and that it hadn't been maybe repaired. I'm just curious if you have plans to improve the road and repair the damage that has been done and to maintain the road. Even though I know that's nothing that we're voting on today necessarily, I just was curious.
Yes. This community is still within the declarations of the operating, is still under developer control. So it means the common areas and any parking areas or roads have not been deeded over to the homeowners. There is no homeowners association managing those 49 units at this time. So any damage to the road will be repaired by the developer prior to turning over the common areas to the property owners. So it's not like we have gone in and damaged someone else's road. It's still, I'm still responsible for that road until such time we get more units constructed across the creek, and then the declarations provide for turning over to the homeowners. Does that answer your question?
So you do have plans on fixing the road and maintaining the road as the construction goes on?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. I'm obligated to.
Right.
Yes. And would want that because that is the entrance road to the community.
Sure.
Yes,
sure,
I
that
don't
makes
want it
sense.
to be an ill repair. Yes.
And I think we would be remiss, Rachel, if you can go back to the GIS map real quick, please, Tom. Oh. So a lot of the letters and inquiries have been asking about alternative access options. And it was pointed out that the Phase 2, I've heard it referred to as both Phase 2 and Phase 3, is landlocked in terms of the ownership. There is no way to cross it from the original development without crossing the floodplain, the revised floodplain. Some people had mentioned coming in off Heritage to the west, but they don't own the land there. And then off Wards Ferry Road, they also don't own the land. So
There used to be an access from Village Road, which wouldn't be an ideal access point probably either, but that got vacated in '89 as well,
Okay.
so there's no access point across that either, so there's really no other way to get to where we need to get to.
I just want to make sure we're addressing all the concerns
Sure.
that have been raised. So
Who owns that little strip on the right that goes up to Wards Ferry? That one?
This is, so you
Aaron.
guys could probably explain this better,
I
but
will.
these 9 units on the side here are under a different entity name now, and I guess different ownership. The units still count towards what the CUP established, even though they've been, subdivided off and sold. But Aaron Commons owns that and these units here.
And so that little strip that would go back there, but it goes through a lot more of the
More-
flood.
right, one of the letters mentioned acquiring access from, I think, that site, but you're actually disturbing more of the floodplain.
There,
It's
it,
expensive, frankly, to.
And for what it's worth, we, over a year ago, investigated purchasing both of those blocks of land that fronted Wards Ferry Road to consider a different, unique entrance, and brought some ideas to the planning department and what have you. And after a half hour, 45 minutes of discussion, we realized that bringing another entrance into the Wards Ferry Road was not something that the city was very interested in, and so we did not pursue purchasing that land.
And it's on a curve and.
Yeah, site distance and traffic counts, and it opened up a lot of things that we have a road, and we really just need permission to fill in the floodplain.
In my mind, I look at it and I think, the plan has been together for a long time, and if it was something new, I would be wanting to talk about other access, but I think the culvert seemed to address the floodplain pretty well.
Yeah, when I was looking at it, I tried to visualize a flooding event with and without the culverts. And I don't see much of a difference. I think the impact will be from building the road, not a long-term impact. And building the road can be addressed. This is one of those things where this is really the only option. And the floodplain impact really is minimal. I think the culverts are going to be able to absorb flow beyond even what we've been seeing recently.
That's correct.
You can jump across the creek right now, and it's been pretty wet
That's right.
lately. So I am inclined to vote in support of this. And I understand the concerns that the existing homeowners have, but again, the decision was made on this whole rezoning years ago, and that's not what we're looking at here. And in terms of traffic, there's no other options. And the original plan was designed for this to happen. They do have, it was, some points were brought up about environmental studies. As Tom mentioned, they are in the, either have happened or are in the works as they continue to find new things. So I'm pretty comfortable with that. I would urge, especially as this becomes part of the homeowners association, that the bridge or the road does get inspected for pipes.
Sure.
To keep them clean.
We'll make sure that that's a caveat in the stormwater maintenance agreement.
Yeah. Other questions, concerns, comments? Well, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
To recommend the city council to approve the petition of Fieldstone Manor as, with the conditions as listed here.
All right. Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So we are recommending approval. Good luck with the project. Public, I would urge you to revisit this with city council and feel free to express your concerns again with them. So thank you. All right, moving on to new and old business. Our next item is the continuation of the discussion of the petition of Lynchburg Investment Company, Inc. to rezone approximately 14 and 7/200 acres at 2820 and 2842 Lincoln Drive from B3C conditional to B3C conditional to amend previously approved proffers to allow the construction of a 127-space parking area.
So, members of the Planning Commission, this was originally heard by you on September 12th, 2018. After closing the public hearing, there was some discussion about erosion issues that existed on site. Planning Commission tabled the rezoning to amend the previously approved proffers in order to allow the representative for the petition and city staff to meet out on site. We did go out and found some pretty significant erosion issues that are coming from the existing shopping center. And as you know, what staff's concern was back in September is that we couldn't support creating a new parking area, new impervious area, without addressing the environmental issues that currently exist. So the petitioner went back to the owner, and they have offered some voluntarily submitted proffers that would address the erosion issues by doing some stream restoration, stabilizing channels, and actually putting an agreement, a stormwater maintenance agreement between the landowner and the city to make sure that any future corrective action can be more easily done and enforced. So with that, we are recommending approval of amending the previously approved proffers with the addition of the new ones.
Just, can you run through with the original proffers? Did you make a comment of the original proffers? Can you just remind me what they were?
Maybe.
Yeah, I should have requested the original petition be sent out.
Did we actually vote to approve that?
No,
No, that was,
no.
So will that be coming back to us again?
He's asking for it
Is this
now.
it?
Yeah, this was, the expanded parking was to allow new business to go into the existing building to accommodate more employees, and I think everyone was in favor of it except for these concerns, with these environmental concerns.
I was not here for that meeting.
The reason I asked Tom is something she brought up at the end, and I just don't remember what the issue was.
the proffers were with?
He hadn't, he had.
You're asking about the original
It
proffers
says the
from-
original proffers will stay intact.
Yeah, they're from back
From
back
80s.
in,
Right.
70s.
But there was one that you'd brought up,
Before I
that
was
so-
born.
something about, sadly, that's not as much of a challenge for me
mean
as
like
it is
a-
for you.
Be like a moat?
There was something else that was in there that you said was something that they were already going against, something about, and I just couldn't remember what it was, and I may not be remembering correctly, but I just wanted to check and make sure I thought about that.
yeah, we had recommended approval of the original petition.
Correct.
I think you're lost. Are you on Fort Avenue?
I'm getting there.
He knows
You
a
should take
short,
an Uber.
he knows a shortcut.
Haven't been drinking. Yeah, that'll work too. 2820.
You're going down Langham Road. Now what? Top of the screen.
So, right, this is the shopping center, and they're
Mhm.
looking to put the
Mhm.
parking lot back in this area. Yeah, no, right in here.
Right in there, yeah.
Yep. So if you remember, there was a gentleman that spoke and was talking about all the erosion issues, which, quite frankly, we weren't aware of because we hadn't walked back down on those slopes behind there. You can't really see it from the top.
Mhm.
So we did go walk it and look at it. But the original proffers are from back in 1981.
Okay.
So what these proffers are doing are essentially saying that in this area that showed buildings, there can be a parking lot and is going to take care of the environmental issues.
Okay, that's fine. I think there was one about an additional building or something that was gonna take place, but that doesn't sound like that's impacted here.
The things that are suggested to correct or to help control this erosion, you think it'll have a positive effect on that man's subdivision? I mean, could you see where it had adversely affected his property?
My understanding of it is from going out there and talking to the water resources staff that the issues with a downstream lake weren't necessarily coming from this, yet it didn't really look good to have this like this. So what you end up with is better for the environment, obviously.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I think everyone who was here was fine with the petition, and I'm comfortable with it, with the revised proffers and with planning staff being satisfied with it. So,
That was a thank you for going back, isn't that, because that was helpful.
Thank you. Yep, yes, sir.
if someone was absent from the original petition, would they vote today?
They can, yeah.
Okay. All right, so do we,
I do have
Yeah.
one question. So it said the stormwater maintenance agreement is created between the landowner and the city. Is that because of the city's involvement with the property in the past? Is that why?
Well, now, any new development, we've been doing this for, I'm guessing, the past 8-10 years. There's a stormwater maintenance agreement put in place that says you have to maintain your stormwater systems on site, your ponds, your BMPs, all of those things. You have to maintain it, and we can go out and inspect it, and if you don't, we can make you do it. These previous sites, where they're not maintaining their stormwater facilities or didn't have any, and they're causing issues, we have no way to go back and require them to fix it. So what this owner is saying is, hey, rezone this property, we'll put a stormwater maintenance agreement on the site, which will benefit the city long-term, not just the environment, because there's going to be maintenance of these facilities. Does that make sense?
I wasn't at the September 20th meeting, but the issue about the erosion was that and I know you said that you don't necessarily think there was a connection, but this was the runoff was coming from there down to that lake that's down at the bottom of Crane Hill, where, yeah, where Ivy Creek is. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Other questions or comments? Before we get a motion, I just want to point out, as Tom mentioned, this was a great example of a member of the public having a huge role on this, because we all missed it. Planning staff and members of the commission, most of us went out there and didn't notice this. So it took him coming forward and raising it for this issue to be addressed. So this is a case where the public involvement, the public hearing really made a difference in terms of the outcome.
But it was, I mean, in the defense of everybody, I mean, that's pretty far back in there. I don't think that doing.
No, I'm
Yeah.
not blaming
Yeah,
anyone.
yeah.
I went out there and I
Yeah.
never noticed this.
Yeah.
So it was well out of sight.
Yeah.
All right, do we have a motion?
Make a motion that we accept this revision.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are recommending approval to City Council then. Thanks for working with them on that, Tom. Our next item is a presentation by Dr. Karen Warren, Herzog Family Chair of Environmental Studies and Science, Randolph College, on the Community Resilience Coalition. And thank you all for your patience in waiting until the very end.
Do you have our PowerPoint that I had sent to you earlier today? Yes, I did. I think I sent it to Robin and she responded and copied you. Presenting with me is Dr. Laura Henry Stone from University of Lynchburg, who's also the new Director of Sustainability there. Okay, let me get my phone so I can give you access. So Randolph system requires that we do two-stage authentication.
Now he's signing in with his Lynchburg city account.
Oh, okay. Okay. Because I forgot to bring this on my flash drive. Okay, let's see, which drive is this? Is it letting you in?
That's great.
She can give you access to
Or-
your,
or you
to your
could-
Gmail account.
Or you could let me log into Google and I can pull it up on my,
It's just,
would you mind, Tom,
You're
if
gonna
I do that? Okay, I'll just
Everything.
run over there and thank you for that. No, he's supposed to read right from. Easier.
He knows I'm sick and tired of this.
that's just a difference.
I'm keeping recall of this.
too. Feel free to forward that on to me. I'd really, doesn't know like very much of Nancy Merriam's report. Facebook in a year and a half. I don't have a clue. I wonder if I just shut it down.
There we go.
All right.
Just. I'm just going to download it because Google Slides messes up for me. So I can go over there and I can ask you to advance slide. Is that okay? Thank you. So thank you for asking us to be here. We really appreciate the opportunity to tell you about what our group has been doing and to solicit any feedback or advice or suggestions you might have for us. As was mentioned, I'm at Randolph College. I'm the chair of environmental studies and science there. I'm also the chair of our sustainability council. And Dr. Laura Henry Stone is from University of Lynchburg and their new sustainability director there. And together we are co-coordinators of a regional community resilience coalition. So could I have the next slide, please? So we wanted to share with you today the work that we're doing with several different groups around the region to try and help our area move towards resilience in the future. Now, the idea of resilience is that a community that's resilient can absorb impacts and adapt to changes. So in order to prepare for coming challenges with regards to physical, social, and economic changes that we can see coming, several communities across the country are developing resiliency plans. And I encourage you to, you can keep this PowerPoint afterwards. I did link a number of resources in this PowerPoint that you're welcome to use, including the 100 Resilient Cities website, which has a lot of free information and gives you access to what many other cities are doing across the United States to help move their communities forward and be resilient in the face of coming changes. May I have the next slide, please? So in 2017 and 2018, the federal government released the National Climate Assessment. It was the fourth such report. The 2017 report was on a scientific assessment. The 2018 report, which came out just a few months ago, reported on economic impacts of changes in extreme weather that we can expect in the coming decades. And so we would want to look ahead and say, what are the key issues that we should be planning for? If you hit the down arrow, it should pull up an animation at this point. There we go. So what this table is showing you is for our particular region in South Central Virginia, what are the expected changes that we have the highest degree of confidence that we'll have to be dealing with regards to changes in weather variables like temperature, precipitation, severe storms, and the possibility of drought. And you can see in the far right column, these are the impacts that have the highest probability of facing our community in the future, including heat-related deaths, rise in electricity costs, increased inland flooding, and we all have a very real sense of what that can mean for our community based on all the rain that we got this past summer. Flooding and power outages, wind damage, and increased pressures for our farming communities that surround Lynchburg with regards to irrigation demand and crop and livestock losses. So may I have the next slide, please? So at Randolph, in 2006, we signed the carbon commitment, which was a commitment to help our institution move to reduce the contribution we make to changes in atmospheric gases that contribute to climate changes. And in 2017, we signed an additional commitment called a resilience commitment. I should note that the carbon commitment is one that was signed by University of Lynchburg as well. So the resilience commitment, if you would go to the next slide, please. Where we are with this process right now, to give you an idea of what our institution is doing, we are several years into a reassessment of our climate action plan with regards to carbon emissions and other greenhouse gases, and we're about a year and a half into our resilience planning process. May I have the next slide, please? And the reason that's relevant for this group is that any institution that signs that commitment pledges to actively support a joint campus community task force. So this means we're not supposed to do this in isolation. We're supposed to coordinate with our community. So in order to do so, Over a year ago, I got in touch with Laura over at University of Lynchburg, as we've collaborated on a number of other initiatives over the past several years at our different institutions. And together we decided to move forward to try and create regional collaborations for advancing the goals of resilience planning. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Laura.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. I echo Karen and thanking you for having us here. And also want to point out that my primary role with the University of Lynchburg is Associate Professor of Environmental Studies in the department with your chair here of the Planning Commission. So Karen and I decided to collaborate primarily on facilitating the planning of and hosting of this Community Resilience Forum last April. We included several of our colleagues and students in this as well, and 3 of you, at least, attended that Resilience Forum. The purpose of that was really to bring people together in conversation to discuss vulnerabilities and strengths and identify priorities. And so what we really want to tell you is what we've been doing since then as well. We succeeded in having some, we thought, very rich conversation and identified groups in the community that we wanted to continue working with. Of course, we were also very excited to include students that you'll see in the slides here to carry on this work into their communities as well. So our primary outcome was to create this resilience network, or task force. And we've come together to meet as an informal group a couple of times now to talk about how we can combine our efforts on creating a more resilient community. And so this is perhaps the most meaty slide with the list of folks who have been meeting together. We have a working vision statement, which is the Lynchburg Regional Community Resilience Coalition strives to facilitate communication and actions to create and steward a resilient urban ecosystem and a just and sustainable community in Central Virginia. So besides the 2 of us coordinating this coalition, we have a couple of folks in the audience as well, including Greg Hogan, who is a resident at Westminster Canterbury, and Kelly Hitchcock with the newly named Central Virginia Planning District Commission, formerly known as Region 2000. Also in the room, she had to leave right at 5, was Jennifer Wills, who works for the EPA and lives here in Lynchburg. In addition to that, we've had Aaron Hawkins from the Department of Water Resources and Leslie King, who is a independent consultant working a lot on those justice issues. And Cham has also joined us at some of our meetings. Could you go back to that last slide for a moment, please? I want to point out some of the synergies here that we've already identified. For instance, in working with the Department of Water Resources, many of you, of course, are intimately familiar with the College Lake Dam issue, and we have talked about that as a perfect example of this resilient infrastructure issue that we're trying to grapple with, and having Aaron's presence on this coalition has been really helpful to talk about how we can help her and work together on planning for resilience around the College Lake Dam. Similarly, Kelly is leading the revision process for the hazard mitigation plan, the region's hazard mitigation plan, which has a lot of overlap with these sort of resilient infrastructure issues and planning for flood events, for instance. We are also interested in expanding this membership. We did have additional folks who came to the April forum who represented sectors such as food issues. We have a lot of interest in addressing food insecurity, and as you noticed in the table that Karen showed, things like drought will affect our regional food system, and so these are things that we want to continue focusing on. For instance, Jennifer Kennedy, the director of the community market, was at our forum and might be involved in this into the future as well. So final, next to last slide. These are some of the things that we want to put on the radar for you all, Planning Commission members, in terms of helping us with this work, building long-term resilience into infrastructure and planning. The earlier presentation was a great example of that, exactly those issues that you all are wrestling with. promoting neighborhood action to help citizens develop long-term resilience strategies. You know, your chair just pointed out the importance of neighborhoods in observing on the ground evidence of you know, flooding and erosion issues. We have a couple of more resources here that have been very helpful for us. Resilient Virginia is a fantastic network around the state. And the National Institute of Standards and Technology has extensive resources on resilience planning for cities. So those, if you're interested in looking into this some more, these are excellent resources and networks to explore. And I believe that's it, and we do have, like 3 minutes for, for questions before you all want to close the meeting, right?
You know, I'd just like to thank both Karen and Laura, you know, for not only the technical expertise, but for taking the initiative on this whole effort. I went to the first meeting, I know some of you all were there as well, and I was really impressed and said, boy, this is something that's really important for the community. And for those of you all who have not been able to come to any of the meetings, we thought it would just be a good thing for the Planning Commission to sort of get a heads up on what I think is going to become a pretty important discussion as we go forward. It does, as they said, there have been a lot of stakeholders that have been identified. I haven't heard anything but general support. We haven't got down to specifics, obviously, on a lot of issues, but everybody that I've talked to in the community, or certainly in the decision makers that are being the process, have been intrigued by generally what is going on. And we need to really, really be aware of what's going to happen. So as we've talked about before, we're not the reaction commission, but we're the planning commission. And obviously, we're going to have some input into this as we go forward. But particularly today, I'd just like to thank Karen and Laura. She's pointed out that Greg and Kelly are here. Greg's going to be a great resource. He's been involved in this area for a long time and is very knowledgeable. And Kelly, especially in her role with Region 2, with the Central Virginia Planning District, is obviously going to be a point person that cuts across a lot of governmental and agency areas. So it's an indication of how important this is that the two of them are involved as much as they are.
Yeah, I mean, similarly, in the past, we've had organizations from, I don't remember the exact name, but the Central Virginia Transportation folks who give us updates on some of the issues they're dealing with, and we have, in fact, adopted resolutions where we have accepted their studies as a form of guidance, perhaps, nothing legally binding, but things that we consider. This could be a parallel to that, perhaps. And I'm not sure in other cities where the action actually takes place, where cities like Norfolk that have done a lot of steps forward, what departments and divisions are the ones that are really leading it up.
It's generally multiple ones. It's
Yeah.
planning, emergency response and management. But in Norfolk, it's basically every department has to be
Yeah.
thinking about this, obviously, since they're coastal. But,
Yeah.
but that also means a lot of communities have thought about this, so there's blueprints that we can follow, which is really helpful.
Yeah. So it might be worth considering doing something like, again, like we did with the transportation folks. And we could certainly make that available, that resolution available to you. You can see the kind of thing that they produced that we agreed with was important enough that we would consider those kinds of things as we made our recommendations. Things like limiting street access and lots of little things that helped in our guiding our thinking process. Again, nothing legally binding, but just something that helps us with our decision making. So we could track that down. By we, I mean them. You know what I'm talking about, Robin?
Yeah. It's been a while since we did one of those, but I'm sure
It's been a while.
find something.
But they come in front of us every few years and update us on what's going on with transportation issues. And there was an ordinance or
I don't remember a resolution, but we can go back and look.
yeah. Or maybe it was just they offered it to us and then we took it as something for consideration, whether it was officially adopted or not. Maybe not.
Well, I think if the Planning Commission, not that you're not serious about it, but if you really wanted to have something like this, place to put it would be the comp plan. and have it adopted.
I mean, I attended that meeting back in April, and one of the things we talked about how Central Virginia is a very friendly place to live, and we rued the day that we said that, because we've seen nothing but environmental events since then. When it comes,
same weekend, we had the tornado.
yeah.
Right after that.
48 hours.
Yeah.
The
Shouldn't have
tornado.
gone.
So the first recommendation is don't have that meeting.
Right.
Well, I would say that would be something to consider as the comp plan gets revisited and updated, is how that could perhaps be incorporated if other folks in other departments and divisions were on board with that.
In a preliminary way, we did start doing that in our summer research program a year or so ago. We did get information about the Green Cities application that the city submits each year from Kent White. And we also did look at the comprehensive plan to see where are there natural fits for recommendations with regards to resilience. And so that's certainly something that we could do again as we move forward, is to make specific suggestions for things that are there or additions that might
Yeah,
make sense.
because that really is our Bible in terms of
Right.
providing guidance. So yeah, I would definitely see where these issues fit into the comp plan. I think that's a great idea by Tom.
And just to piggyback on that a little bit too, I really appreciate the overview, but I'm fascinated to see where we go next. Because as you saw from the meeting today, a lot of the smaller issues, what do we do with this watershed? How does this impact that? What do we do there? Those are all things that would be helpful, as you guys come up with stuff. That would be, to Dave's point about updates. Whether or not it was, rolled in or not, until the flood, I had no idea how many little streams and things there were around Lynchburg. And there's a network. And as we saw today, there's all kinds of stuff that are going on, some good, some not so good. That's one small part I realize, but just as an example of, it's part of the day-to-day stuff. So as you move forward and deal with more of the day-to-day stuff, anything that would help me think better, I'm all about.
Thank you.
Great. Any other thoughts? All right, well, thank you all very much. We'll definitely keep this in the limelight as we move forward. Appreciate all your work.
Thanks. Thank you for having us today. We appreciate the time.
Thank you. All right, our next item is the one we postponed, that's elections. So, Tom, I'll let you.
I'm trying to figure out how to log out from her, so. Deal with it. I'll do it one day. Okay, so members of the Planning Commission, the Code of Virginia requires that the local commission elect from its membership a chair and vice chairman whose terms shall be for 1 year. The bylaws and rules of procedure of the commission also state that the commission shall elect a secretary and shall be a city employee, which is typically the city planner. The duties of the chairperson are to preside at all meetings, appoint committees, rule on procedural questions, report official communications out on the commission's opinions, and certify official documents involving the authority of the commission. The duties of the vice chairperson are to assume the full powers of the chair in the absence of the chair and carry out the duties assigned by the commission. Obviously, the secretary duties are the things that staff does, maintaining minutes and records and notifying of members and those things. So we do thank Mr. Peralt and Cham for your, and Mr. Light for your service. But at this time, I would call for nominations from the floor for the position of chair.
I'd like to nominate Tom. Second.
All right. Are there any other nominations for the position of chair? If not, the nominations are closed. All those in favor of Mr. Rogers being the chair for 2019, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations.
Ted, you're up.
The next position is position of vice chair. Call for nominations.
I'll nominate Kinsey Johnson.
I'll second that.
All right, I'm assuming you will accept that. All right.
I
I
know.
love that enthusiasm from the.
Hey, Graham. All right, are there any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, nominations are closed. All those in favor of Ms. Johnson being vice chair, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. The meeting is yours, Mr. Rogers.
So I get the gavel right now?
Well, I didn't give it to you. Would you like it to adjourn the meeting?
Well, I guess, is there any other business to conduct, or?
You know, I'd just like to say, Dave really has done a great job. You know, he's firm and professional, but also has got a nice personal touch. The comment about the citizen involvement at the end of that last presentation, I thought was right on. I'd just like to give him a round of applause.
I agree.
Thanks.
And I'm glad he's going to be around to assist,
Yep.
because he does a really good job.
I'll be
Yes.
happy to assist. Make my cheat sheet available to you and to both of you, and I'll be happy to help as needed.
Did you do it 2 years?
This is the end of my, almost 3.
You were chair for 3 years.
Almost.
Wow.
I stepped in when someone had to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, you did a great job,
thanks.
for sure.
And we do have a retreat scheduled too.
Oh, yeah. When's that?
January.
That's the workshop.
Oh, that's.
Sorry, I meant to say work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, workshop's the 31st.
Are we planning a retreat?
I meant just
Yeah,
the workshop.
If you guys want to do one, we definitely can. We haven't planned it yet.
We'll go to the homestead?
I know, I was gonna say the Greenbrier maybe.
I think we do the workshop first, and then retreat later in the spring, maybe. After. Yeah.
I agree. I agree completely.
I don't know how you'll pay for it.
All right, well, if there's no
Sell
other,
car wash.
Is that a consensus of that's something that you want us to start working on? or-
I think it would be good later in the spring.
Why don't we see how this
Yeah, see
workshop goes?
what the workshop's like, and
But the workshop, from what I understand, it's not just our locality, it's more, it's
Amherst,
a
Bedford.
broad, yeah. So I don't know how much, like, really hands-on stuff we'll be able to do with just our commission.
We won't know until we get there. Maybe we need to discuss the retreat concept again in February.
And the nice thing about a retreat is it's nice to be able to kind of get an idea of what other departments are doing, what's going on in the city, in the way of things like transportation or.
How many of you were here for the one that we had at
Fort Early.
Fort Early? Yeah. Okay.
I thought that was pretty valuable,
You were,
actually.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
everybody but Kinsey?
Yeah, I haven't been to a retreat yet, so.
We get a chance for a little bit longer conversation with a lot of people that we just see as a drive-by.
Mhm.
It sounds like you guys would be interested in maybe setting that up after the regional workshop. Okay.
Sounds like a
Yeah.
plan.
All right, well, if there's no other business, anybody make a motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
I'll
Second.
second.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.